G'day guys, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the MPR308. Before we get into the review of this here rifle, let's have a wee chat. You may have seen some reviews before. Those reviews were done on the prototype. This here is the actual first production model. So it is slightly different from what you've seen in other reviews. Not a great deal, but just some little things here and there. So some of the issues they had on the prototype have been rectified. So some of those reviews may not be completely accurate to the production model. So full disclosure as well, Wedgetail did send me this rifle to review. They also supplied me with some F4 762 ball ammunition from Talus to put through the rifle. I've fired 220 rounds through it just to put it through its paces. One thing I will say off the bat, that this is a very, very well-made rifle. It's using furniture from other companies. So we have all Magpul furniture, so Magpul grip, Magpul stock. Our ejection port cover is actually made by Strike Industries, which is a company that does AR stuff. The trigger, I'm not too sure what brand the trigger is, but I'm assuming that it is a third-party brand as well. One thing I completely forgot to mention, which I'll throw in right now, is the fact that the trigger is a little bit shit. The manual says it's supposed to be a 5-pound trigger. I checked this one, it's just over 6 pounds. The trigger has a lot of creep in it. Yeah, look, I just really didn't like the trigger at all on this rifle. Being that it is a normal AR trigger, you can just change that if you can find one. Bear that in mind. The trigger is shit. You might have to replace that. Aesthetically, you'll see that this looks very similar to the Wedgetail semi-automatic rifles, and you'll probably notice that we have a blast deflector on the front, which we'll get into in a minute. Overall, I found the rifle pretty nice to use. One little wee issue we did have was after it heated up a fair bit, there was a number of issues trying to extract the cartridge. Now that could have been the ammunition. A lot of the rounds we did check, the ones that were hard to extract, we did notice ejector swipe marks on the back of the brass. So those ones could have been slightly higher pressure than the others. I'm not too sure exactly why that was happening, but we did notice that it was happening once the gun started to heat up, and then we would start to see the issues. One thing I did find that if you limp wrist it and you don't allow the working parts to go fully forwards, you'll be able to drop the hammer, so you'll fire, you'll hear it go click. It does have an out of battery safe, so it's not actually going to fire that round, but what it will do is, in your mind, you're like, click, okay, I've had a malfunction, you'll cock the gun. Because the bolt hasn't fully closed, the extractor hasn't connected over the rim, it's not going to pull that round out, and then you'll end up with a double feed. Now that did happen a couple of times. If you then let it go like that, it seemed to chamber fine pretty much every time. So that's just something to consider. That can become an issue if you limp wrist it. But realistically, that was the only real drama we had with it. So at the end of the 220 rounds, I feel like it was starting to wear in a fair bit. We did have those extraction issues, but the more we shot it, that was at about, up to about the 100 50 to 180 round mark, we were having those issues. And then as we got up to around the 220 round mark, that's when it really, those errors were fewer and further between. So I feel like the rifle was really breaking itself in. Don't be too discouraged if you get it and you do have issues to start with, only just minor extraction issues. They will probably wear themselves in once the gun starts to get worn. Yeah, the fit and finish on this is absolutely superb. I do like the fact they've got Magpul furniture, not just some random cheapo stuff. And obviously if you want to change that, you can, because it's just normal AR style stuff. Now let's talk about all the optional extras as well. So obviously we have our blast deflector, we have a bag and all this other stuff. So just so I don't give you some incorrect information, I'll pull my phone out and I will find out exactly what all this stuff costs. All right, so the bag itself is $235, recommended retail price. The brake that's on it is $189, and then the shield, the blast deflector that goes over the top, is another $149. So combining those two together, I would recommend if you're going to get one, get both. You want to use the blast deflector, which is actually really good. You're going to need it to thread onto the correct part, so you're going to need the brake as well. The rifle itself retails for about $3,800, so it is rather expensive, but sometimes you just got to buy once, cry once, and spend that little bit extra money, so you're not buying something that's half that price and then having to send it away constantly for warranty jobs and things like that. Here's some footage of it firing without that on. And here's some footage of firing with it on. Obviously being 16-inch and 308, it's still burning powder outside of the bore. That's why you get that big flash. So this really does help, but that's an optional extra. One thing I did notice with this blast deflector on and off is it did actually shift my point of impact slightly. It went about an inch diagonally left and down. So not a big deal, just something to consider. If you zero with it on, then you take it off, your point of impact will shift. Obviously the fit and finish on this is fantastic. The form factor though is something that for me personally didn't work too well, and it didn't work for Jeff, who helped me test fire this rifle as well. So, and that being how far forward the pump is. To get my eye relief correct, it would be about here, and that would not just my eye relief, because obviously you can move the fucking scope, can't you? But for where your arm sits. All right, that for me is comfortable, and that's the correct stance I want to be in when I'm firing. Then to have that there and that length of pull correct, to get out to here, I'm at full arms extension. Now, I'm about 6 foot and I've got pretty fucking long arms, and that's full extension for me. So if you're short, that might be an issue. To rectify that, we would then have to drop the stock down. But then for me, my arm is uncomfortably tucked in, and I didn't particularly like that. It did make it easier, and now I'm bent arm to cock it. Yeah, just something that didn't really work for me. One way around that, we found that putting a vert grip on the very back of the pump gave us something to grab onto there, and that made it easier. Without the vertical grip or any other grip, it became quite slippery. Now these are textured, but they're not that grabby. And then obviously you pick rail on the bottom. Yeah, it's not the greatest thing to grab onto without some sort of grip. So an angled grip would work quite well with this. As I said, we used a little vert grip on the back here. So you may have to stuff around with that to see what works for you. That just became an issue for us. Jeff's a bit smaller than me, and he found it quite awkward to reach forward and grab that without dropping the buttstock length down. Now obviously the benefit of this one being that that is not a fixed stock, so you can change that. However, if they get approved for the New South Wales compliant version with a fixed stock, that may become an issue for you, not being able to change your length of pull to be able to get your hand onto the front of the rifle. And that leads me on to actually actuating the pump. If you've watched Nick Mayle's review on the prototype version of this, he mentioned in there that he preferred to cock and then release and just hold it there and fire. So like that. And that does work. If you're going down the path of IPSC, which I know a lot of guys in the IPSC world are waiting for this to come out in a 223 so they can use it. Obviously, you're shooting a lot of rounds in IPSC, so 223 is a lot cheaper for them to run. If you were going down that path of wanting to do IPSC with this, normally when you shoot that style, you're gonna have your hand on the pump at all times. It is a bit awkward. The other thing is, because this is kind of on the premise of a straight pull, where the bolt doesn't lock forwards in battery like a standard pump action. So let's say a 7615, a 7600, the SCSA Type N Light does it, numerous other pump actions. In fact, probably all pump action shotguns, or the majority thereof, will lock the bolt closed when the bolt's forward. That way you can pull back on the handle without it coming out of battery. All right. So with this, you can't pull back. So for those of you who are used to firing semi-automatics, where you will usually grab the forend and pull it back into your shoulder, and this hand here does no supporting of the rifle, it only does trigger manipulation, that may be a bit of an issue for you. You may have to change the way you shoot to meet this rifle. Obviously, that's not a massive deal because the Warwick works off the exact same principle. Don't get too wrapped up around the axles about that. Just understand that you can't pull back on the pump to lock in your firing stance as you will open the bolt and take it out of battery. Get sticky. Stripping of this rifle is incredibly easy too, and we'll jump onto the bench and demonstrate that. Some of those other guns in the same category, you need an old priest and a young priest and 17 different Allen keys, and you might be able to get it undone in about 20 minutes. This is super easy. So we'll jump onto the bench and we'll show you that now. Look, I apologise for the absolute abortion that is my workbench. I'm halfway through doing a couple of jobs, and obviously I've got shit everywhere. So to take this apart, we have takedown pins. So we have one back here, and we have, this one's technically a hinge pin, but that hinge pin does come out, so you can split the upper receiver from the lower receiver. Now, I did manage to do this in the field with a empty cart case, but being that I'm in the workshop, I will use tools instead. All right, so you're gonna wanna punch this pin down. Now, it is a captive pin, so you have to try to punch it all the way out, and then from there, we are now opened up. Now, in the back of the firearm, it's going to be a bit awkward for me to show you. Right, so if you cock the gun, up in here is a little tiny slot. So we'll grab a screwdriver. Now, you can do this with the back of a cart case. I should have probably filmed that for you, but I didn't. So we're just going to rotate that until it's vertical. And there we have our bolt carrier out of our rifle. That's essentially field stripping done. To take it fully apart, let's say you're going to put it in the Tiger Stripe bag, you would punch that pin. All right, so now you have two separate assemblies, and that can go straight into the bag. So we'll just quickly, I'll zoom in a little bit more, we'll jump into doing this bolt carrier group, and then we'll put it all back together. I was going to do a whole video on strip and assembling this, but it's so simple that I don't really need to. All right, so just like an AR, we have this little split pin that goes through here. It has a loop on it, so you can pull that. All right, that pin there comes out. Our firing pin will then come out. Once the firing pin's out, remove the cam, and then remove the bolt and the firing pin spring. That's it. Super, super simple. Then you can do all your cleaning and your servicing, etc., etc. All right, so put the spring back on, put the bolt into the carrier, ensuring that this little nubbins here is on the same side as the groove. Drop in the cam, making sure that's running north-south with the bolt. Put in the firing pin. Now with the bolt fully extended and the firing pin in there like that, get your split pin, give it a squeeze. Now you may have to wiggle it around to get the split pin to close back up again. But once you have, it will just push back in like so. And just in case you couldn't see before, that's the switch we're turning. So when it's in the vertical position, that's how you get it in and out of the bulk carrier when you turn it. So that line is horizontal, that means it's locked. So to put this back together, all right, so with your pump handle all the way back, slide your bolt in, all right, until it hits there. Now we need to turn it, so get your screwdriver into your little slot, give it a clockwise turn. All right, now your upper receiver is fully reassembled. Now let's say you've just pulled it out of your bag, you're at the range and you want to get ready for shooting. So your pins will be across like that in the bag. You want to have your hammer cocked. You're going to push your pins all the way out. Line at the front, push your pin through, hinge it down, push your rear pin through, and now you are good to go. So what are my overall thoughts on the MPR? Look, I think the MPR is a fantastic pump action rifle. I think Wedgetail has done an excellent job on making it. I know they did have issues in the past. They had a Gen 1 MPR a few years ago. I think they sold only about 20 of them because they realised that things weren't functioning correctly within that rifle. So they took it off the market, they fixed it, and now we have a Gen 2. Kudos to them for actually listening to their customers, realising their product was not up to par, removing it, fixing it, and then re-releasing it, as opposed to just leaving it out there and going, oh well, you bought a lemon. Overall, I think it's a fantastic rifle if you're looking for a pump action rifle. So there you go. I hope you got something out of that. I hope that was informative enough. If you have any questions about the Wedgetail, drop it in the comments and I will see if I can answer them. If there's anything else I didn't cover that you wanted me to cover, obviously drop that in the comments too, and I will endeavour to get back to you. And yeah, that's all I got. I'll see you next video, and hooroo.